But I want to go to LeBatard. Yeah, LeBatard. So LeBatard is a sportscaster. Now, we've talked about the Trump thing, where Trump is out there making this disgusting thing for Elon. Let's see, do I have this up? Where he's getting his crowd to chant, send her back, send her back. It's vicious. He goes on a 3-minute tear attacking Ilhan Omar, AOC, but he eventually settles on Ilhan, saying, she's spitting on our troops, she's looking down on us, and doubles down on this notion of she needs to go back to Africa. Now, he told that to 4 people, 3 of which were from the United States, meaning he was telling black people to go back to Africa if you don't necessarily if you were criticizing me. Which is utter nonsense. Yeah. I mean, come on, that's nonsense. Now, my argument was, this is dangerous. I don't care if you call it racist. I don't care what you call it. It is dangerous. He is whipping up the crowd into a fervor, into this kind of hatred, the vitriolic hatred, aimed at one individual person who is Somali. Meaning there are people in that crowd who already hate her guts before she opened her mouth. Many of the people don't even know her. Ultimately, this is just kind of a specter of her, and they're using this to attack directly her. It came out today that they found a cop thing saying AOC needs to be shot. They need to put a bullet in AOC. Because, again, Trump is whipping these crowds up into a furor. My point in this, and there are some whites, even on this channel, that doesn't get this. I don't see this as a big deal. I don't see why you guys are bothered by this. Why is this a problem? You don't get how the president of the United States in this country with this particular history, whipping up a crowd into a fervor at 4 congresswomen, one of which is Somali. I mean, I don't understand why people don't necessarily see why that's an issue, and he's going to do this all across the country. The president has a mouthpiece, meaning everywhere the president goes, there's a press agent in front of the president. There are a large group of people that support Donald Trump. You can look at those hate rallies that Donald Trump has. Those things are full, and those things easily fill out stadiums far more than many of the other Democrats, with the exception of maybe a Sanders. Are you telling me that everybody in that crowd is rap tight? You have a bunch of gun nuts, and those gun nuts are being trained on one very specific congresswoman, meaning Ilhan, but not just her, the other congresswoman that Donald Trump is using in this. This is dramatically dangerous. I don't understand why some people can't see that. Fortunately, not everybody is in the dark on this. And just so you can see the rally itself, I want to see if I can find the very specific.
We have a clip to show.
Yeah. I have a clip of Trump's hate rally. In fact, I'm not going to show the hate rally.
We've seen it.
We've seen it.
Let's not watch
I want to show
again.
this part. This is the response. This response is amazing. And I watched this, and I got to be honest, I felt some kind of way. Like, as a positive. Because I have somewhat of a point of view that Donald Trump is running with this with the notion that the crowd is okay with this. Like, that the public, there's more of the public that is okay with this than maybe I even think. And there's some people, not so much.
We're hearing responses.
So this is LeBatard. LeBatard. He's a sports guy. I think this is ESPN.
A sports newscaster or sportscaster.
A sportscaster. ESPN. Listen to his response. His response is amazing.
Basically, a chant, send her back, is not, it's not the America that my parents came to get for us, for exiles, for brown people. Like, there's a racial division in this country that's being instigated by the president, and we here at ESPN haven't had the stomach.
By the way, Donald Trump is whipping up his base. That is true. The catch here is Donald Trump himself is the son of an immigrant, which is, his wife.
Is an immigrant.
We're immigrants. The woman can barely speak English. And going further than that, this country is a country of immigrants. I mean, when he started talking, I realized, he's right. There are a lot of first and second generation immigrants all over the world in this country.
That aren't of color.
Oh, that are of color. I mean,
I know, but I guess
he's considered white, but he still identifies with this notion of.
A lot of times, the problem with immigrants is pointing towards people of color.
Yes.
I mean, let's be honest, brown and black people of color. But there are a lot of people not of color who are immigrants
who identify
or descendants of immigrants, like second generation. So
LeBatard makes a point of saying, this isn't politics. This is racial. And I thought, that's why, oh, I like it that you say that, but politics has always been race. I mean, when we talk about the Klan, you're talking about the slavery, you're talking about Lincoln, all that stuff was racial in the sense of the way it was being put. But I guess my point is, I like that he's saying that, because he's saying, look, we can have this argument over politics. This is different. Can we at the very least agree that we belong here and that we're Americans, even if we fight? I love this. I love this. He gave me...
For that fight, because Jamel did some things on Twitter and you saw what happened after that. And then here, all of a sudden, nobody talks politics on anything unless we can use one of these sports figures as a meat shield in the most cowardly possible way to discuss these subjects. But what happened last night at this rally is deeply offensive, done by the president of our country. And this tweet from Nick Wright, if you're listening to people chant, send her back, about a Somali refugee who serves in Congress. Nick Wright writes, I don't talk politics on here, but this isn't political. This is obvious. This is abhorrent, obviously racist, dangerous rhetoric, and not calling it out makes you complicit. The send her back chant and the go back to where you came from are so antithetical to what we should be. It is so right what he is saying there. It is so...
You know, the funniest thing in the world is this guy.
He's looking like, oh my God.
He's like,
oh shit.
He's like, oh shit.
We're
he's going there.
He's like, what do I do?
I love it. Wait.
Stop this.
Let's go back. He's just in the chair like, oh fuck, he's going there. Look at his face. And they focus in on him for a really long time.
Obviously racist. Dangerous.
Like, he is not responding. He's not a head nod. I don't think he's blinking.
He's like, oh fuck.
But he's like,
and the go back to where you came from.
Well, I don't know if he agrees or disagrees.
He's like, I'm not associated. I'm not commenting. I don't have anything to do with this.
He just looks like
it
he's
is so right what he is saying there. It is so wrong what the president...
By the way, I so agree with him. He's like, look, can we at least agree that racist stuff should be off the table and that shouldn't be an issue of politics per se? Meaning, this notion of saying send somebody back to their country is gross and that should be off the table. And whether you're a Trump supporter, whether you're saying it just across the board, his argument is, if this is what the president has to argue on, like, this is really gross politics. I mean, honestly, like, there is a faction of the country that loves this. There's a faction of the country that like it and would never honestly admit that they like it, but they, fair enough. And Trump is going to hit that base. My hope is that there are a lot of the country that at very least understands what people of color in this situation are saying, like, whoa, this is different. Like, this, I've never seen a president do this in modern times where he is, this is where he's going. Even John McCain had enough gumption to say, he's from this country. Not, but that those creatures were there even then. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Let's watch the rest.
Our country is doing, trying to go down, getting reelected by dividing the masses at a time when the old rich white man feels oppressed, being attacked by minorities, black people, brown people, women. That's who we're going after now. Black people, brown people, women, and that's let's do it as the platform. That's what you're seeing. And the only way we can discuss it around here, because this isn't about politics, it's about race.
Yes, I love
what you're seeing happening around here is about race, and it's been turned into politics. And we only talk about it around here when Steve Kerr Popovich says something.
Look at him, he's freaked out.
We don't talk about what is happening unless there's some sort of weak, cowardly sports angle that we can run it through, when sports has always been a place where this stuff changes. Muhammad Ali was fighting for this stuff in the 60s. Bill Russell and Jim Brown are really old. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is old. These people who were fighting, the most powerful among us in sports, who are fighting in the civil rights era for atrocities happening to black people, that we're still...
God, I love that. Fuck, man. I love that he said that. Because I gotta be honest, I had even forgotten that point. Like, they're talking all this about Kaepernick. What about Ali? Ali went to fucking jail. Like, Ali was like, I'm not going to fight no white man's war. You've lost your goddamn mind. They put him in prison over that shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Like, this pretending as if, oh, I'm just here to watch sports, as if sports had already been delineated from politics. No. What catches is capitalism is the catch. African Americans have divided interest in this. We're African Americans, meaning we're people within the context of a particular society and a culture. However, these guys are also playing in sports that is their jobs. Well, there's a time where those two things actually clash with one another. One of those is Ali. He has a really good point. He's talking about Jim Brown, all these guys. He's like, this stuff was taking place in the 60s, and this stuff was ensconced in sports because of the way this country was. However, the country also just so happened to love black bodies when they're running with some kind of object.
Yeah.
How do those things, God, I love this. You have no idea how much I love this. It's so
Still
well
paying
done.
for now in a
That's
country
what I said,
where
Irene.
this is our greatest sin. What has happened to minorities in this country? They're old and dying. Jim Brown walks with a cane, man. He walks with a cane. He's going to go to the grave without having seen change. He's going to go to the grave with Colin Kaepernick still out of the league. Literally blackballed. Because we're taking this stuff and making it about the flag when it's not about the flag. It's about race. Like burning a cross and saying it's about God. This isn't about the flag. This is deeply offensive to me as somebody whose parents made all the sacrifices to get to this country. Send her back. How are you any more American than her? You're more privileged. You're whiter. You're richer. But people don't know whether your money's real or not. You've had every privilege afforded to you by America. Every privilege. And now what you do with that power is you go after brown people and black people and minorities.
Look at him.
And around here we won't talk about it. We won't talk about it unless Russell Wilson is saying something about it on his Instagram page. Then we have the power to run with it. Weak-ass shield.
Wow.
It is antithetical.
That's a weak-ass shield.
The guy looked at him. He was like,
if
man,
you're not calling
somebody
it
got to cut him off. Somebody got to cut his mic. Power failure.
He said that's a weak-ass shield. Oh, I love that. God, you have no idea how much I love that. You have no idea how much I love that. You have no idea how much I love that. Look, I watch that, and that gives me hope like nobody's business. As an African American, and I hear the President of the United States screaming like a banshee that people should get out the country if you're criticizing the country. One of those happened to be Somali, the other three just so happened to be black. And he's saying, go back to Africa. It does make me feel some kind of way when people back her up on that. Like when they say, look, they'd be like, and they hit him on this, saying, this is nonsense. You can't tell the fucking people to go back to Africa and she's no more, Trump criticized this country relentlessly. It's their job as Congress members to do it. If you can't find a problem in the government, why are you even running for office? Yeah. Not to mention, he was the one that shut the government down for those months for a political stunt. Those were government workers that had lost their ability to get money based on something that the President of the United States was doing. And now his ass is screaming, get out the country. Trump lost $1 billion in taxes. He had every advantage afforded to him that a person could have, and he failed relentlessly. And then he gets in president. And when people make this argument that as an African American, you have to be better than your white counterpart, Obama, just to make the point, was in Harvard. He was in Harvard Review. He was like a straight A student or whatever. Yeah. He did everything right in life. He even got rid of the white woman that he loved so he can get the black support. I'm just making the point that from a political, he did do that.
I say you don't know if he loved her, but go ahead.
He did. He wanted to marry her.
Okay.
He shed it. I mean, there was a political thing. It's true, by the way. That's a true story. But my point is this: he did everything right. He was the height of excellence. Becomes president, and the guy that follows him was a failure the entirety of his life that had every privilege afforded to him, and was screeching like a banshee that the guy wasn't even from this country with a birtherism charge that was his claim to fame. He gets elected behind that excellent person as president. When African Americans make this point of saying you have to be 4 times better than your white counterpart in order to get advanced, the whites, I don't know if that's true. Look at the President of the United States, the previous one and this one now, and tell me that's not true. I'm sorry, it's true. It just is what it is. Now, to say that, comes across as a charge of identitarian. This channel has focused on class because I think class is the thing that matters more. But it doesn't make stuff dealing with identity any less true. And I think the problem that sometimes people on the left have, especially on the unfortunately white left, is that they want to pretend as if it doesn't exist. It's the issue with what's her name at the conference, where she goes into the meeting of African Americans and she wants to do a videotape, and they tell her, no, this, and she assumes that it's because she's white, and she goes out flipping out about this. Now, the woman's not racist by any means, but in her mind, she's making this argument that, well, we should be beyond issues of race, and pretends as if there's been a gap in history somewhere where they were already there. We're not there. The fact that Trump got elected to some degree, we're not there. You can look at the polling in regards to what was in people's minds when they were voting for Trump. We're not there. The Democratic Party running on identity is going to lose. We're not where you think we are. By the same token, I love hearing this. But, I guess my point is this. Can we at least pretend, or not pretend, as if there's been a gap in history somewhere and that people have all of a sudden changed? They haven't entirely. Our system is different. The world has moved further to the left in this regard. There's been a hegemonic shift in what's socially acceptable in regards to what's talking about race. And the response to some degree on this, even though I think it may have been overblown, and Donald Trump is like running on the fact that it was overblown, it does make me feel some kind of way that the public did to some degree have an outcry of support for Ilhan and for the congresswoman that he's telling to go back to Africa. Yeah. So, there's that. But I get frustrated with elements of the left and elements of the right that look at stuff like this and act as if, no, he wasn't talking about race. No, that wasn't threatening. As if they can't entirely see the perspective of the minorities in the country that look at that and have extraordinarily qualms with the president whipping these people up into fury. Yeah. Like that's extremely problematic and extremely troubling on the left and right.
This is a CNN show, the Dan LeBatard show.
ESPN show.
Somebody, what did I say?
CNN.
Oh, I'm sorry, ESPN, thank you.
I'm putting the link at the bottom.
So you can check out.
I love that. Fearless.
Additional content.
That was utterly fearless. That was awesome.